Okay. So first thing we want to talk about is what is the most memorable homicide that's taken place this year so far?
They all of them have different things that make them stand out for, I think, police officers that respond to them. There's something about every one that stands out, but typically the ones for me that stand out are the kids. The younger the kids, the more it stands out, and I would say probably Xavier Lyles. This year is, 3 years old, big chubby cheeks, big smile, happy little kid, killed in his own home, place where the kids are supposed to be safe. So that's probably the big one for me this year.
And what were the most successful tactics this year for reducing the rate of homicide?
The tactics change not only year to year, but sometimes within the year, but they all kind of rely on the same thing in order to be successful, and that is constant information sharing, not just here inside the police department, but with our community and with other agencies. So we see a lot of homicides that are families in crisis, so domestic violence and babies and children. So that requires us constant communication with all of those agencies that interact with families to make sure that we're communicating if we believe there's families in risk and that they're communicating with us. So really that information sharing, same thing with persons who are in mental health crisis. Typically they have been in contact with the police or the system somewhere. So making sure that there's constant communication inside the agency and outside the agency, it's like relentless. You can never give up, never stop. And so it shifts sometimes from year to year and through the course of the year. This year we've had a lot of domestic violence cases. So trying to reach out to all of our external partners has been huge. The child cases played a big role in domestic violence this year. And working with our advocates. We have fantastic advocates that will do lethality assessments and try and encourage victims of domestic violence to seek help and get out before it becomes lethal. So that's been really helpful to us. So it's the strategy's changed, but the priority is always the same: communication. Got to just relentless communication.
Okay. And we noticed the Homicide Watch, one of the department's goals were to get 100 homicides less than 100 homicides in the year. And I know, through the previous years you've been getting closer, hovering around that number.
So well, we got below. We hit 88 in 2012. So I've been saying it for 8 years, and it took, the first little over 5 to hit 88 in 2012. Mm-hmm. And we had the Washington Navy Yard in 2013, which was a mass shooting. There was 12 murders in that one single day. And right now we're still under 100, and we're going in the second week of December. I would love to say we think we'll be under 100 this year. I hope we are. But I was hoping that each year would be lower and lower and lower. So I was hoping 2013 would be less than 88, and 2014 would be less than whatever that number was in 2013. So while I'm happy that we're still way lower than we have been, I'm not happy that it's not lower every single year. So that's kind of the goal now. I have to push.
Okay, so seeing as though you're at 88 right now, what do you think it'll take to drive that number down even lower?
Well, we're not at 88 now. 88 was the low
previous year
from 2012. But I think, we are really reliant now on some of those partner agencies to be more and more involved. When you have the vast majority of the homicides this year occurring inside of homes or inside of a house. I mean, all of the juvenile cases, so every person under the age of 18 that was murdered this year was murdered inside of a home. Okay, so that's a challenge for police, but it speaks volumes for everybody else. The home is where you're supposed to be safe. So, especially if you're a child. So I think what's really going to take now to keep driving this number lower is because we do a good job on arresting people responsible for homicide. So it's not like you have the same people committing multiple murders anymore. But now what it's going to take, police are focused, the community's focused on helping us get those people off the streets when homicides have occurred, is all the other partners who may not necessarily think their primary goal is homicide prevention. It's homicide prevention. So, family services, health and human services, mental health. I need all of those people to all think that one of their primary performance measures is homicide prevention.
So we all know there was a new mayor elected to DC. What advice would you give Mayor Bowser?
She doesn't, she's been around a while. She's not new kid on the block. She's going to be new mayor on the block, but she's been around as a council member for a long time. And my sense is she's not going to need a whole lot of advice when it comes to policing and what to do for public safety, because she's always been very involved in that. I think do what she has been doing. She's very supportive of public safety. She's very engaged and involved. When Jaden Stansel was shot over in Northeast several months ago, she was at the vigil, at the service they had in the community thanking the police officers, and she comes to recruit graduates. So I think she knows where the priorities are, and she's committed to reducing what violence is left out there. So I'm not going to presume to be so presumptuous to give the mayor advice. I think she's going to be okay.
Yeah. So what would you in general like the city to do to reduce crime?
I would like the city to have every single agency in DC government have one of their performance measures be homicide prevention. Every single one. We do track that as a motive. It is extremely rare that we see that these days compared to years ago. The important thing I'd say about that is we never have witnesses that are killed. We offer witness protection, and we offer some means to protect people. And if they take that protection and follow the rules, they're never killed. I say that knowing that it's not easy to relocate from where you're from. It's not easy to stay away if you have family or friends in the area. But making a decision as to whether you're going to help take a murderer off the street is not a decision to be taken lightly. I get that. I do get that. And I think about, I remember hearing a speaker that was talking about, things that happened in, during the course of the uptick to the Holocaust, and his point in reciting some portions of someone else's writings was, I remember they came for these folks, and I didn't say anything, and then eventually they came for me. So I think about that all the time. It's a tough decision, but if you can stop somebody else from being murdered, and you can do it and be safe, it's what we want people to do, because sooner or later people who are committing murders in our community, the likelihood of them committing another one, and whose child is next, and whose child is next, and whose child is next. So that's what I try and think in the back of my mind, but I do realize that it's not easy.
Okay, cool. And when you say rare, how often does that happen, or how many? I don't know if you know a number per year approximately.
I can think of maybe 5 or 6 since I've been the chief, and that's in 8 years, maybe 5, that were killed after testifying. I can't think of any that were in witness protection and compliant, with not coming back to the area.
Okay. And then, just to bring up one point on the 21st in Vietnam cases, I'm sure you've heard a lot about that already, but Stephen Curtis Moore was one of the victims in that, and Johnny Harris was accused of killing him because he was assumed to have been assisting with the government, and I was just wondering if you could confirm or deny that.
So I'm not going to talk about specific cases, but here's your other dilemma as a witness. If you are a witness and you don't cooperate and don't help take that person off the street, they may assume you are a witness and are cooperating. And we have seen cases where I can think of 2 or 3 cases right now where people were either attacked or shot or killed because they were believed to have been a witness and they didn't tell us anything. They weren't. I mean, they weren't cooperating. So that's the other dilemma. If you cooperate and we can provide you protection, let us provide you protection. Because if you are a witness, who else knows that you're a witness? And whether you cooperate with us or not, will somebody else make the assumption that you did? So that does happen.
And then, do you think there's any improvements that need to be made, or in the case that that's not your side, do you think that, do you have advice for people who?
Are you talking about in terms of protecting witnesses?
Yeah, it says what you guys can do better, or what, can make it easier for them.
Well, there's nothing easy about relocating, and there just isn't. But there's also nothing easy about being the witness to a murder. Your life is forever changed when you witness a murder. Whether you cooperate with the police or prosecutors, your life is never going to be the same. And it is, how safe, you feel or want to feel and believe in the process. But I can tell you, if you are in a protection program and you follow the rules, we're running at about 100%. I wish there were ways to make it easier, but how do you make it easier to take somebody out of the neighborhood they grew up in, where their family is, and move them somewhere else to keep them safe? That's going to be hard no matter what. I just don't know that there's any substantial thing that we can do that would make that easier on people.
And then I just have a couple questions on firearms.
Okay.
The first question, so we have the firearm data from the last 5 years, what's been picked up, and I'm wondering, there's some parts where like one serial number will show up with multiple charges, and after speaking with
You talking about one gun used in multiple cases? Okay.
And so when I spoke with someone at DFS, they said that, well, it's probably incredibly rare that there can be cases when it gets back into the street.
After it's been recovered by police?
Would you say that's not the case?
Yeah, I've never seen that happen. I've never seen that happen. Once it's recovered by police, it's held as evidence, and after a case is disposed of, it's destroyed. It is the case that we see the same firearm used in multiple cases. I mean, we do see that, and that's why I say it's so important to try and take shooters off the street as quickly as possible, because they're not going to stop shooting, and where that gun goes from victim to victim is sometimes multiple people.
Okay. And then what is the MPD doing to locate firearms for shooting homicide cases? I mean, is there a specific protocol?
Well, believe it or not, the number of homicides that are the result of gunshots has dropped and continue to drop every year. I think so far this year, 67% of our homicides were with a firearm. I mean, the first 15 or 16 years of my career, 97 to 99% of all homicides were gun homicides. So 67% is a pretty dramatic drop in gun-related homicides overall. We have a gun interdiction unit that is relentless about pursuing illegal firearms. Frankly, legal firearms aren't the problem, it's the illegal firearms that are the problem. So we do have a gun interdiction unit that tries to weed out the illegal firearms. Officers doing their job every day recover firearms. And then in the case of firearms used in homicides, we have teams of officers that are designated just for that. They get Warrant Task Force that goes out and looks specifically for those people and those firearms.
Okay, and I think, and then I guess that would answer what you guys do to reduce the number of guns kind of that are rolling around the black market in DC right now. I mean, it's just, that's...
Yeah, it's way better than it used to be. I mean, it's, there's always going to be an illegal market. The fact that you can legally register firearms, the fact that there is a process for legal carry of firearms, none of that's going to change the criminal element. We just have to have a system that is a deterrent. So the risk of carrying a firearm has to outweigh the illegal possession, and so that's the goal. And so with the gun interdiction unit and then with the rest of the justice system, there should be a sufficient deterrent that if you're caught with an illegal firearm, that that there's a penalty that's significant enough to deter you, And certainly if you're caught more than once with a firearm or have used a firearm in a crime of violence, the penalty should be significant enough that if you're weighing your choices, you choose not to. And I think we've swayed that pendulum some, because we went from 97% of our homicides being gun-related to 67%. But we're not there yet, and there are always going to be people that are going to take their risk. And those are the people that we have to kind of focus our efforts on. It's a small number of people that commit an awful lot of crime.
All right. And then I guess our last question that I have at this point is your digital training center simulator proposal. How has that changed the way that cops learn to interact in split-second decisions?
So it's actually pretty amazing. There's a lot of ways to train your brain. Split-second decisions are something that you can prepare for to a certain extent. I mean, what you see when you're under stress and what you hear when you're under stress is very different than what you see and hear when you're not under stress. But the simulator gives us an opportunity to try and simulate that as much as possible. It's not real world. I mean, it's when you walk into the simulation that you're not going to get shot, and you know that the person that you're going to see on that simulation is not going to take your life. So you can't simulate that, but you can simulate instant decision making, absolutely real world, what an officer has to do when they feel like their life is in danger, and that's the real thing. Simulators are good for good tactical movements. They're good for ability to quickly recognize a knife in somebody's hand, or quickly recognize while you're focusing on one person that might have a gun on you that there's another person with a gun on you. So that's what the simulator is really good for. What it cannot simulate is once your body is under stress and you feel like your life's in jeopardy, your vision changes, your hearing changes, your perception and all those things change. There's really no way to simulate that. So while I love our FATS, we call it FATS machine in our simulation, it can only do so much.